Okay, we'd like to do something like this, okay? Something similar to this. It adds two numbers and displays the results similar to this thing. So if we'd like to do something like this, I'm just going to create a project. I'm going to call it week 3 calculator. And then, so this is going to be the main. And by the way, in the assignment, what I need is basically not the main, but the other class that you're going to be working on. So I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call it calculator. And this one extends JFrame, which is found in this javax.swing. This is where I can find it. Now, in that JFrame, I would like to have 3 labels, 3 text fields, 4 buttons. So let's do that. JLabel. So I have 3 of them, so I'm going to call it label number 1, and then make this private. And JLabel, I need to use control space so I can have the import done by NetBeans. And then copy and paste number 2, and the last one is for the results. Results, so result. And then I'm having, you know what, just copy this, because I have exactly the same thing this time with the JText field. So with the JText field, which is also in this JavaX swing, and I'm going to call it TF for text field. So this is much convenient that I always use this kind of shortcuts. So as soon as I read the name of the variable, I know what's its data type. And then the same thing, maybe, yeah, okay, private J button. Then btn, I'm going to call it add. And then subtract, multiply, and divide. Now I just like to have the constructor. I'm just going to create this constructor that is just going to be like that, and then without anything, because all I need to do is to just call it from here, and that's it. I'm going to show you something else which is nice though, something different, and anyways, I'm going to show you first. So now, before I forget, the first thing I need to do is to set title, or maybe I could just call the super constructor with a text, which is going to be the calculator. So I'm just going to mention calculator here. Now if I do this, this is going to just call the constructor and initialize the title to be calculator, and then have set size. I just would like to show you some other things. So let me put the size to be 200 by 200, and then the position, I'm going just to set location. Now the L and the control space, it's now the, I don't know, 700, 350. So I just would like to run this so you can see it. Well, of course, nothing is here, so I need to create an object from that. So calculator C or F or M, like for frame, equal new calculator, and then frame dot set visible to be true. Now if I run, I'm going to be able to see it. Okay, just to see the calculator here is there, I can see that. Okay. Now I can do it differently by just, instead of calling the superclass like this, I can put the set title. Because set title, what it does the same thing, it just changes the title of that frame. So now if I run it, It's going to call the no argument constructor because I'm not calling any constructor, so that means it will call the no argument constructor. But then I can change this. I'm just trying to show you different ways to do the same thing. But actually, this one is used if you'd like to change it. But since we're going to call a constructors anyways, the other way, like this one, is much better. Why? Because you just call it, and that's it. But what it does this basically. I hate it when this doesn't. So it just calls the constructor, and then the constructor will change the title to make it calculator. Now there's another thing I would like to show you, which is kind of nice. This set visible here, I can just remove it from here and put it inside. Set visible, and to be true. Now what does this do is that now I don't need to do this. As soon as I call the constructor is going to make it visible. Now if I run, that's it. I don't need to set it visible. Just by creating an object, it will just create the frame. Yes?
Do I need to create an object?
Of course you do. Now you cannot just remove this, because if you remove this, the constructor is not going to be called. But one thing, do you really need to store this new object into a variable? No, you don't. Because you just need to call the constructor, and then it executes, and then it's not saved anywhere. And that's enough to run the program. If I run this, that is enough, so it runs it. Now there's so many of these I need to close, because I forgot to put this set default. You remember the set default close behavior, or close operation, to be jframe.exit on close. So now this is just setting just the frame with the title and the different settings, and I made it visible immediately. Anyways, these are just, I'm showing different ways to do the same thing. So whatever you do is okay. I'm just showing you different ways, that's it. Now if I'd like to add now the other things, is that first of all the set layout. New flow layout. So that's what I'm going to do before even starting to do anything. Then the next thing is to initialize my instance variables. So label number 1 equal new JLabel and with number 1. And then a copy paste is going to help me with the number 2 and then with the result. Just copy this, and then this is number 2. Then I'm going to initialize the text fields equal new j text fields, and now I'm going to just specify the size. I don't know, make it 10, and then later on I'm going to see if it's okay. I just would like to do something like this. Sorry? TF doesn't exist. Yes, I need to just choose number 1. Yes, no, that's the thing. Okay. So I'm just going to copy and paste T2 and then the result as well. Yes. No, I did not put them in the. I did not add them to the frame. So this is just preparing them, and later on I'm going to add them. Yeah, you can add them, then you can initialize, doesn't matter. But I prefer just to initialize, prepare everything, and then add them in the correct order that I want them to be. Now I'm just initializing them, making them ready, and then later on I'm going to put them in the right order that I want them to be. But in this case, the order is not important, because I'm just initializing them. But when I add them, then the order becomes important. Because the first one needs to be this label 1. The second one needs to be the text field of the 1. If I just change that, it will be messed up. Now the last one, the last components I need to initialize are the buttons. So the J button. So I'm going to put this to be a plus, and then copy and paste with the subtract to be a minus, the multiply to be an X, so it will look like multiply, and then divide is just a slash. So now I've prepared all these the way I want them to look, and then, oh, there's one thing though. Did you notice this? It is a text field, but I'm just going to show you that. Let's just now add them. Now if I'd like to add them, I'm just going to add the components in the right order that I want them to be. So the first one is the label, then the text field, then the label 2, then the text field 2, then the label result, then the text field result, and then the buttons, the button add, and then I'm going to copy and paste to have the subtract, multiply, and divide. Now if I run, so the size maybe did not show up. I don't know why it did not show up at the beginning, but I think I should play with the size so I can show something like this. Now maybe how to play with that size. So let me just run it again so I can see. Wow, it seems weird to me that anyways, it is weird. It just shows up only after I set the size. I'm sorry? Reduce the height. So which one is the height? So this one is the width. So the height is the second one. So maybe 150. But even though it seems to be, why doesn't it show up at the beginning? It's kind of weird. Okay, let's just make it big. Is it, if it's bigger, is it going to work? So I don't know why, but let me try something. I'm just going to, after I add them, I'm going just to set the size and see maybe this is going to do something different. To be 200 and 150. You see, there's something. I don't know what. It's not supposed to be like this, but there definitely is something here. So why is it like that? Allahu Alam. But it seems like this. When I set the size, it's like it resizes it, so it draws the components on that. Oh, but that's a good point, because before we were never using this visible here, and yeah, let me do that. Let me come put it back. That was a good catch. Now, if I remove the visible from here and put it in the back, I think this is what is going to happen, because when I set it visible, then I make changes. When I make the changes, then that's why the visible is going to make everything possible. I think that was a good catch. So set visible is definitely something you would like to keep Flask, because normally this is what happens. After you initialize, you set it visible. So yeah, that's a good catch. So it seems to be fine now, right? All I need to do is to do this. Now, even if I'm a big fan of now adding anonymous classes to one for each this, it's kind of tempting to make the whole thing implement the interface, because the only difference is going to be plus, minus, x, and division, which is just an if it's plus to this, if it's minus to that. I'm going to do basically the same thing. So I'm going to do this one, but then I'm going to show the other way. So once I do this, I need to implement the action performed. Notice that the action performed takes as an argument an action event, that's the important one that I'm looking for. But in all cases, I would like to make the number one double. Why? Because if I'm dividing, I would like it to be double. So I want it to be double. So I'm going to take this, the text field number 1. I'm going to get the text field number 1. I'm going to get the text, but the text I need to convert it to a double. So how to do that? Well, this whole thing I'm going to use double.parseInt. There's no parseInt, it's parseDouble, and then you put the text that you would like to convert. So now this is going to be converted from a string to a double, and that double value I put it inside this double number 1, and then I'll do the same with 2. Now I just did convert the two numbers. Now I'm going to have a result, let's say, but then the result is going to be depending on what kind of operation I'm doing. So I'm going to use an if-else if. If what? If the get action command is equal to a plus, then the result is going to be number 1 plus number 2. And then I'm going just to do another else if. Let me keep this else. I'm just going to do an else if. This is going to be minus, then I'll do the minus. And another else if it's multiplication, then I'm going to multiply them. And the last one, I don't need to put an if, because I know if it's not a plus and not a minus, not a multiplication, is obviously division. But I'm not going to divide all the time, because with divisions I need to make sure that if the number 2 is different from 0, because if it's equal to 0, I cannot divide by 0. So if it's equal to 0, I'm going to say, okay, let's put the result to be 0. But if not, now I know it's not 0, then I'm going to divide number 1 by number 2. So then after, now the advantage of now doing this all in one place, I'm just working with all the buttons at once, because all the buttons, each one of them, it needs to take the number 1 and convert it to a text, from a text to a number. The number 2 converted from text to a number. I need to do the whole thing. So the only difference is this line that is different for each button. So it's going to be a kind of convenient to make the frame implement the interface. Now the last one is to put these. Yeah, exactly. I would like to show these into results, in text field results. So I'm going to put this in the set text of the text field results. But I cannot put just result like this. I can put result maybe on some kind of thing like that. So it will convert the double to a text. But the best way to do that is, remember, string dot value of, and then you can mention result. Yes.
For the divide, result equals 0. We can't put a word here.
You can put a word, but then if you'd like to do so, then you have to maybe put some kind of thing, because the way the organization should be different. Because if you put a word here, it's going to be changed here. So you need to change the way you're dealing with things. So for example, you can put some kind of Boolean value to be true, or it's error, and then here you ask a question. If the Boolean value is error, then you display a kind of message. Yeah, I just want to make things simple, so that's why I keep it simple. But you're right, if you would like to do it, I mean, more professionally, it should be like an error message saying you cannot divide by 0, for example. But then you have to do something like I mentioned. So now if I run this thing, if I put 1, 2, click on the plus, nothing happens, because I forgot one very important step. Now I put the action, what should happen when I click, but I did not mention click where. Now this action is associated with what? When I click on a button? No, I did not mention that each one of these buttons should be associated with this action. So how can I do that? How can I say that this action is associated to this button while here? when I initialize the button, I just need to add action listener, which is this. And I'm going to do the same for each one of them, because all of them are going to be going to the same place. Every time I click on one of them, the action is going to take them to that same place. And for divide, same thing. Now all these ones, each one of these buttons is going to be connected to this action here. This is this calculator, because I say this means this class. But this class implements the action listener, so it will find this action performed, and then it will just execute it. So now if I run number 1, 2, plus, minus, multiply, divide, everything is working fine. And if it was 0, I divide, it will be 0. So everything is working fine. Now the last piece of detail is this: how can I make this look like this? Now you notice this is different from this one, because this one I can change them, but this one normally when it's like this I cannot change it. It has the same color as the frame. That means it's not enabled. So that's something now that I can know, that I can use. Now in this text field result, I want it to not be enabled. A result set enabled or enabled to be false. Now set enabled allow me to make it even if it's available or not available. Check this. This is set enabled. Oh, but the color is not the same. But look, if I come here, I cannot click in this one, so it's not enabled. So it's like something that is visible but not the same thing. But it's not. This is not enabled that I can do. This enabled will work good with buttons, for example. Let me show you set enable what it does when I make it false for a button. Now if I make it false for a button, now I put it for the button add. You see the button add is not available. That's how you can disable a button or make it available if you want to, by putting set enable to be true or false. By default it's true, it's enabled, but you can set it to false and then it become not available. So now even I click here, nothing happens. Nothing is going to happen. If I click here, well, something is going to happen. But you get the point. Now set enabled is not what I want, so I'm going to put it as a comment, so you can come back to it later if you want. But there was another one towards set editable. That means can I change that? And if I make it false, by default I can change inside of a text field. But if I make it set editable to be false, now I cannot change it, and it shows this color. The advantage is that I can select, but I cannot change. While the other one I cannot even select. If I make it set enabled to be false, if I run it, whatever I type here, it's not selectable. I cannot see it. Even it's not really visible clearly. So it's better to use this one with a text field only. The editable is only for a text field, and those that are like it. So I can just select it, minus, multiplication, division. And I can do something, I don't know, just to play with this. Nah, maybe 12 is enough. So I can have this something similar to this. Anyways, so that's the calculator. I can do the same again if I don't want to implement this action listener like this. I can have the other option to have an inner class or the anonymous class that, as we've seen before. Then I need just to put the code in separate place. For the plus, the code is going to be separated, which is going to result in a lot of copy and paste, because this is basically the same for all the buttons. I need to do this, and at the end I need to put something into the result. So the only difference is this. So you're going to copy the whole thing inside these different separated actions. That's the only difference. Alright? That is the calculator. We can do more.